So what I wanted to do in this video was simply follow the conversation, see what's been posted about on social media, and see where most fans are taking it. Because I get it, you know, this kind of a video seems like a ridiculous idea, but I do think there are rational argument. I had to pause for a while there to say that. Rational ideas, rational thoughts that you can have about this overarching thought process, so we're gonna dive into it here, because earlier yesterday we had ourselves a tweet made by David Calabretta from the Fourth Period. He is one of the marketing people and Canadiens contributors on the Fourth Period's website, and he went out there and posted this yesterday, which got 33,000 views and a whole bunch of replies. Renaud Lavoie says that if the Colorado Avalanche can't extend Mikko Rantanen, they will trade him. And that is a really big idea, because it's one where it's like, yeah, okay, of course, you want to see top-tier superstars stay with their teams, but at the same time, the prospect of a top-tier superstar leaving his NHL team and either going to free agency or hitting the trade market, that is a lot more exciting. So, we are talking today about Mikko Rantanen of the Colorado Avalanche, and by the way, I have to go out there and say this. So, the Avalanche, of course, have been a pretty big powerhouse in the NHL the past little while, but yesterday, they played off against the Chicago Blackhawks. They lost 3-1, and guess what happened with Mikko Rantanen, the guy that we're talking about in today's video? Well, he had 27 minutes of time on ice in the game yesterday against Chicago, and he did nothing. No goals, no assists, no shots, no hits, no blocks. The guy went out there for a cardio skate. You can see that he was riding a 5-game goal streak heading into yesterday's contest against Chicago, but yesterday against one of the worst teams in the NHL, with 7 more minutes of time on ice than he's used to, Mikko Rantanen did nothing. And don't worry, he has a chance to redeem himself later today as the Colorado Avalanche play off against the Minnesota Wild. By the way, this Wild team, incredibly injured. Like, they have one top 4 defenseman in their team right now, and it's not one of the better ones. So, obviously, Colorado, Rantanen, they might have themselves a huge chance to redeem themselves, and Rantanen might go off for 5 points today. Who really knows? But I just wanted to toss that little tidbit out there, because yesterday, Mikko Rantanen's production, or lack thereof, certainly was an interesting talking point. But if you go back over onto the tweet made by David Calabretta, there are a whole bunch of replies underneath this tweet about some different teams. And of course, the quote that David cites is from Renaud Lavoie, who is a primary Montreal Canadiens guy. So even in the replies here, you're seeing one of the top ones. Rantanen for Pezzetta. Who says no? Yeah, okay, obviously joking. But there are a decent amount of Montreal Canadiens fans in the replies to this tweet talking about whether or not the Canadiens could legitimately do this. And if you go over onto the quote tweets, you'll see even more conversation from Montreal Canadiens fans to varying amounts of virality. Jake Evans for Rantanen, Cole Caulfield, and some picks for Rantanen, or anything else that Montreal and Kent Hughes could do for Rantanen. It's all Montreal. And then there are a few replies, a number of them actually, that are talking about the idea of Elias Pettersson potentially getting sent over for Mikko Rantanen in some sort of a Vancouver, Colorado swap. And so I don't know if it's like confirmation bias, the fact that I cheer for the Canucks and the Canadiens, and the fact that I like making videos about them and it's become my full-time job. I don't know if it's tunnel vision or anything, that because I primarily focus on Canucks and Habs stuff, that now when looking at this Mikko Rantanen thing, there are mostly Canadiens and Canucks fans going out there and making trade proposals. I guess there are cathedrals everywhere for those with the eyes to see. Anyways, let's go out there and talk about some of these ideas and discuss whether or not Mikko Rantanen, of all people, can be a Montreal or Vancouver trade target. You see, with Rantanen, his contract is expiring at the end of the season. He is making a very reasonable $9.25 million a year, and that's kind of crazy that we can say that a $9 million contract is reasonable. But for Rantanen, multi-time 100-point guy, and one-time 55-goal guy too, it's pretty reasonable. This season, he's on pace for 113 points in 82 games played. He's established this reputation for a long time now as Nathan MacKinnon's #1 winger, and while that would come with the assumed reputation of being a top-tier sniper, like, oh, he's the primary winger to Nathan MacKinnon's play driving, so Rantanen probably gets a whole bunch of goals. And while that's true, he's always been a lot more of a playmaker himself. Rantanen always gets more assists than he does goals, usually, and this season it's no different, on pace for 66 assists, which would be a career high. And of course, the goal production speaks for itself as well. While he is primarily a playmaker, he can still score 40 goals a year and 35 goals a year in his sleep. But Mikko Rantanen obviously is making a lot of money for a reason, and at 28 years old, there's no telling what the dollar amount could be if he were to become a free agent. Are we talking 14 million? Are we talking 13 million? There was a video that we made earlier in the year, or last year, I guess, going over the Mikko Rantanen $14 million price tag and whether or not Detroit should be the one to pay it for him. But for Montreal, this is one of these situations where you've already signed a whole bunch of big money deals, and you have guys who are going to be on the books for a while. Patty Laine is making 8.7, he's making that till 2025-26. You've got Nick Suzuki, Cole Caulfield, and Juraj Slafkovsky all making 7+. Gallagher's at 6.5, Anderson's at 5.5, so you already have a pretty reasonable amount of money tied up into your, let's just say, top 6 paid forwards. Not top 6 forwards, because not all these guys are in the top 6, but you get what I mean. I'm not going to immediately jump to conclusions and say, oh, let's do Patrik Laine and whatever for Mikko Rantanen, one Finn for another Finn, because ideally, I think Laine and Rantanen playing together would be the goal. Would it not be? There would have to be some sort of value going over back to Colorado, and if Brendan Gallagher, for example, is the guy with 50% salary retained, and then you add on a few other things there, maybe it works. I'm not really too sure. You're probably not seeing Alex Newhook getting sent over to Colorado, but of course, this is all assuming that Montreal is keeping the same roster that they have. You have Mike Matheson, for example, who's making $4 million. Who knows if his role on the team is really all too secure with Layton Hudson now around. The Montreal Canadiens, at the time of recording this audio, have $7.5 million in cap space. And Patrik Laine isn't on any sort of an IR or something right now. He is just regularly on the roster. So if you wanted to move some money around, there actually are some opportunities to do that. If you can imagine Mikko Rantanen, one of the top point producers in the NHL, heading over to Montreal and playing alongside a Suzuki, Caulfield, Slafkovsky on the power play, things sound very nice. In fact, I'm thinking about Juraj Slafkovsky and saying that this guy could probably get lessons on how to be a top-tier big winger from Mikko Rantanen, because really, I mean, Rantanen's a big dude himself. He's 6'4", so I think if you're looking at a guy like Juraj Slafkovsky and trying to project his future, I think best case scenario, Slafkovsky ends up as a guy like Mikko Rantanen. So there's definitely an opportunity here for learning on the Montreal Canadiens. Not to say that Rantanen wouldn't provide his own goal scoring and playmaking support in the team, but still, this is one of the more underrated aspects, I think, that a Rantanen acquisition could entail. Meanwhile, let's go over to the Vancouver side of things, because there are a lot of people talking about whether or not an Elias Pettersson for a Rantanen trade makes sense and all that, and I'm just kind of sitting here thinking, okay, well, if you're thinking about paying Rantanen something in the 11 whatever million dollar range, and he wants more than that, he's like, yeah, I can get 14 in the free agent market, would you take a downgrade from Rantanen to Pettersson to get that dollar amount? Because if a team like Colorado looks at Petey and says, oh, this guy can be as valuable, if not more valuable than Rantanen, and he's already locked on at 11.4, then maybe it's a trade you actually consider. Maybe Pettersson is evaluated higher. He is a center, he is younger, although he doesn't produce as much as Rantanen does. I think he can. It's possible. It's just Pettersson has not been as consistent as Mikko Rantanen over the years. So I really actually do like that Pettersson for Rantanen idea. It's one that's popped up a lot here in the replies on that tweet that we read. So I actually do not think it's that bad, honestly. And if you think about like JT with Brock and Mikko Rantanen, for example, that's a killer first line. Obviously, you'd be losing a lot of center depth with Petey gone, but Rantanen is capable of playing center as well. So there is something to consider there, although at the same time, I mean, if you're thinking about what the center depth looks like long-term, if the Canucks really want to rely on JT Miller to being a #1 center, then maybe it opens the door to trading away Petey, although I'm not really too sure if they would be willing to do that. Is Miller a #1 center? A true, bona fide #1 center? I'm not too sure. And is Teddy Bluger or P.S. Suter a regular 2C? Who knows? Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below about this entire Elias Pettersson for Rantanen thing, or a Montreal for Rantanen thing, whether or not it's actually plausible and whether or not you think he can or will get traded. Renaud Lavoie says so, but I want you to let me know your thoughts in the comment section. I hope you enjoyed this video. And bye.